All right, welcome back, everybody. So, listen, ethical. I'm going to use that term, ethical, in quotations. Ethical maintenance contracts should be sold to your customers. It's a way to make money. It's a way to make sure their equipment runs properly. Okay, what I don't like is the 39.99, 100-point inspection type maintenances because they're a bit of a scam as far as I'm concerned. It'll get you in the door, sure, but make sure when you get in the door, it's all ethical maintenance and all ethical sales. Anyway, we're going to speak to a young and upcoming rock star in the industry. Okay, her name is Glynn, and what she does is she's on the commercial side of selling maintenance contracts and tailoring maintenance contracts, right? Customizing them for different applications, different buildings, and stuff like that. So we're going to have a conversation with her, and she's only been doing this for 4 years, but it sounds like she's been doing this for eons because her terminology is bang on, and she wants to keep learning and progressing in her career. So we got Glynn on the HVAC Know It All podcast. I'm your host, Gary McCreadie. This podcast is sponsored by Cool Air Products, Master, Cintas, and SupplyHouse.com. Go to the show notes and click on the links to check these guys out. All right, Chloe, welcome. I've been seeing a lot of your LinkedIn stuff coming through my feed on LinkedIn, obviously, because that's where I've seen it. But
Yeah.
You're in commercial HVAC maintenance. You want to explain that for us a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So I work for a commercial and industrial mechanical contractor. I sell preventative maintenance services through that company. So you won't see me on the project side at all, engineering side at all. My sole job at Midwest Mechanical, which is where I'm at, is to find new business and sell preventative maintenance agreements to them. Only commercial industrial. So I tend to stay away from what we say like the 3 R's, which is residential, retail, and restaurants. Few instances, maybe I'll dabble in it depending on the opportunity, but primarily commercial industrial for sure.
I'm going to agree with you on that. I do a little bit of residential. I don't like it, and I find
Sure.
residential, it's very hard to sell maintenance to a residential customer, I find, because nowadays, especially, I find them to get a little bit more tighter on the wallet. Restaurants,
Mm-hmm.
I've done work for restaurants before, but I find restaurants it's the same thing. It's like they need you, they want you, you do the work, and it's hard to extract money from them because restaurants have a very low margins. Retail, yeah, I can see where you're coming from there. I've done some retail stores as well. As long as it's within the realm of commercial work, then I will do it because that's the kind of stuff that I like to do. So tell me, why not retail? What is it about retail that you try to stay away from?
I do retail sometimes if
Okay.
it's like an entire strip mall,
Yeah.
or like sometimes like fan coil units and like a perfume store or something like that. Why I would stay away from them most of the time, unless I have a relationship built with the person who's asking it or something like that,
Yeah.
is because we're a union contractor.
Okay.
And usually it's a rooftop or two, depending on that. And you're paying me like the union, what I call a union premium, essentially, for something that maybe Chuck in a truck could do for substantially less money and might not do it, badly, because it's one rooftop, unit. There's not a lot of liability depending on what it's feeding into. So pricing wise, I tend to get priced out of those.
Mhm.
Uh, Even if they really want me in there, unless there's multiple units, I'm competing with someone with a lot lower hourly rate. So
Yeah,
that's why I
I get it.
tend to not go for those very often. And I feel like, yeah, when they see the price of a service call for one rooftop unit,
Mhm.
I've seen sometimes they feel like there's like a buck back at it, which is fair, fair enough. So I think that's where I like to dabble, where I'm also going against another union contractor, because it's just comparing apples to apples, where there it's way harder to compete, in my opinion.
I gotcha. No, it's very cutthroat sometimes, right? It's very competitive, it's very cutthroat. And I see what you're saying about the strip malls. If you're getting the whole entire mall and it's mainly retail, like why not go after it? But when you said fan coils, it brings up the scary you said fan coil in a perfume store, and I was recently at a fan coil in a makeup store, and
Okay.
I hated my life because it was like up in the ceiling, and it was a drywall ceiling, and there was this little portion cut out. That's it. And you could barely get up there. You're standing there like this. You could barely reach the filters, barely reach the belt. It was dangerous. And I'm like, because I did it for a sub. I was sub to go there. And I'm like, I don't think I want to
Sure.
go back there because It's not accessible. I mean, if there was a problem beyond maintenance, I don't know how I would even get in there to even troubleshoot or fix anything, because there's just no room. Like, do you come across that as well?
Yeah, so I always joke when I look at accessibility when I do a walkthrough in general, but in this specific case, I always say, I'm like, ooh, I'm gonna have to give you a tiny or skinny technician because I don't know how they're gonna fit through that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's always in like an awkward place or over a counter that's like where their cash register is, or again, like it's not labeled, so then you're kind of searching for it for a second. And obviously if you have a main technician that goes there, they're going to know where it's at. It'll be labeled.
Yeah.
But I just don't find that at least what I'm looking for when it comes to preventative maintenance, I wouldn't say it's my bread and butter. I'll do it here and there. Again, if I know somebody who does it or who knows me, who wants it, or it's a larger opportunity, I'm likely to step in. But again, the tight spaces, business hours, you have to be concerned about. It's easier to go in a mechanical room and nobody
Well,
could see you than be in the middle of the floor
mechanical
doing it.
rooms are beautiful. I love a nice, clean, tidy, maintained mechanical room. They're the best.
Yes, right.
So let me ask you this. When you're going after a customer, what is the maintenance requirements that you are trying to withhold? Like, you go to the customer and say, listen, we sell maintenance programs and we do maintenance and we follow up. We do basically preventative stuff, so your stuff is not breaking down in emergencies. We try to find it and fix it before it breaks down. What are the main selling points that you would use to sell a maintenance contract to a business?
Sure. I really think it's Midwest Mechanical's culture that makes my job significantly easier.
Yeah.
That being said, I mean, this is pretty typical downtown, but we're union, so we
Okay.
use 597. And so it's nice to know that, when I'm sending a technician out here, they're fully trained. And I'm not sending a guy out here who has to call two other people to figure out what's going on. How we interact with our technicians and our customer service reps and our service managers, we all are a team. And it's really clear when you're working with us that we're a team and that we all collaborate together, because at the end of the day, I always say, when I'm taking pictures, looking at accessibility, condition, model, and serial numbers to put together a preventative maintenance agreement, when I'm working with the service manager, I want to make sure, they're assigning the proper tech to service that type of equipment, which they are. And then, communicating with the tech of the expectations that the customer and I had talked about, making sure those are executed. And then I always, big shout out to our customer service reps. You could not pay me enough money to have that job. And they do such a good job scheduling and dealing with billing on a customer depending on, their needs. So
Yeah.
I feel like because it's such a collaborative effort at Midwest, it makes selling for me substantially easier. I'd say also reputation and word of mouth has helped me quite a bit. So, you don't ever know what engineer, facility director, property manager knows all the other ones because they all
Yeah.
talk to each other. So I feel like, doing exactly what you say you're going to do with a customer and then, having them as a reference has helped me quite a bit. We're really large in the Chicagoland area. So, I mean, we have over 100 technicians.
Oh, wow.
That being said, like surface area wise and urgency, if you have a service call, we're able to, show up in a very timely manner. We use XOI. I don't know if you're familiar with
Yeah,
XOI.
I used to be affiliated with XOI back in my younger years.
Oh, okay,
Well,
cool.
HVAC Know It All and XOI had a bit of a partnership at one point. So
Oh, okay. That's cool. Yeah, XOI, super helpful tool. I always say it's great for, the guy who's the engineer on site, but it's also really great for communicating to someone who has no heating and cooling background. Because, I mean, they might look at a burner and be like, I don't understand, but you could see it completely corroded over because you haven't pulled and cleaned the burner in 2 years and be like, I don't know what that is, but that doesn't look good. I feel like a picture tells, a large story about what's going on.
yeah, so just quickly, XOI, is it still the same where the technician would have their phone, turn it on, and someone back at the office could watch and help them out through that phone or through the platform? Is it still the same way?
I think it's pretty similar, yeah. So like
Okay,
pictures and
cool.
videos get uploaded and then communicated through a link.
Mm-hmm.
So I use XOI too. So when I for example, I was at a walkthrough
Mm-hmm.
like an hour ago, and
Yep.
all my pictures I'll upload into there.
Okay, cool. All right. So the maintenance programs that you sell. So I like the fact that you said you send different technicians to the different maintenances because they require different skills and stuff like that. For instance, if you were to send an apprentice to something that's high level, like a big chiller or server room that can get intense if it's one unit and it's down and the managers or facility people are breathing down your back, it's probably best that an experienced journeyman or something goes to those types of things. Or the apprentices, I know in my past, we would do like the smaller rooftops on the strip malls and stuff like that because they weren't like critical in by any means, right? So is it something similar? You guys, is that how you roll out the tech? Something similar?
Yeah, I would say a lot of it's based on skill level. If we have a guy who's really good at boilers and there's a bunch of steam boilers or condensing boilers, it would make sense to send him rather than just like assign it in like an order type process. So getting that information on the equipment is helpful. I also think something that's underestimated from a salesperson perspective is understanding the client's personality type. I have techs that are, super chatty and they want to talk and have a conversation, and they're really good with people that are outgoing or they want a lot of details. There's ones that are really detail oriented, So I think understanding the personality type of who the client is, also matching up the personality type with the technician, because again, you've got a bunch of different personality types on either end of that, and making sure that they would get along because you're going to be seeing them quite a bit and they have to trust them enough to call them is really important too.
Yeah, no, that's really fair. That's a really fair point. I mean, I don't know. I've taken the approach where I'm just myself with all the clients I've had. I've meshed with different personality types through the years: grumpy,
Yeah.
happy, moody. Like I could name like the seven dwarfs. Basically, you could name them
Yeah.
all, right? And I mean, I just am myself with all of them. And if they don't like it, then too bad. I've never really had much of a problem because I can usually kind of anticipate someone's mood and kind of change the way I might approach them type thing. I just feel I've got a skill where I can adapt to the different moods and different people. But some people can't do that. Some people, they are the way they are. They're going to talk fast no matter what. They're going to talk slow no matter what. And you got to match those people up properly. So I think that's really cool that you do that. But let's talk about why commercial maintenance is important,
Sure.
because I don't know how many things I've come across or how many strip malls I've been on where the tenant downstairs is responsible for the machine type thing and don't do anything to it. They just wait till it breaks and then they call and then they wonder why it costs so much to fix it. Well, maybe if you maintained it 2 or 3 times a year over the last 10 years, you wouldn't be in this predicament. So why
Right.
is selling maintenance to a customer important? And here's the thing. We talk about selling as being unethical sometimes, like going in, and this happens a lot in residential, and I'm glad you stay away from it. But we have these technicians going into residential homes selling smart thermostats to 85-year-old grandparents. Like they don't need that.
Sure.
But in commercial, it's a different story. We need to maintain this equipment for that facility because the downtime in that facility could cost more than what it actually costs to fix the machine.
Yes.
Chloe, so tell me why selling maintenance is important ethically to these commercial customers that you have.
Yeah, sure. So reason preventative maintenance is important is because heating and cooling, installation of new equipment is a large upfront cost. So protecting your investment on an ongoing basis. I've always related it to cars. Sometimes it's easier for people to fathom, especially when an equipment's, a piece of equipment's few $100,000 up to, millions of dollars. Saying like, if you bought a Ferrari, would you never do an oil change? And they look at me like I'm crazy. But same
Mm-hmm.
concept. It's a
Mm-hmm.
mechanical piece of equipment that costs about the same. So it makes sense to maintain it to extend the equipment's life on an ongoing basis. A lot of things with energy efficiency can affect it. So lower utility costs overall is something that's pretty beneficial. As time goes on, we're obviously getting more green. So HVAC is starting to move that way. And the effort is going, towards that. So making sure they're aware of that. Indoor air quality also is pretty important, especially depending on the facility and what it does inside. Creature comfort's always a big thing, and making sure people are comfortable. I always, feel bad for certain facilities directors, depending on how many people they have that have the possibility to complain about it being too hot or too cold. It takes away their time to go, deal with that rather than doing all the other maintenance activities they have throughout the facility. Another huge one that I have always thought, why do preventative maintenance, is lower repair costs. So if you're performing preventative maintenance, ideally you're going to catch something deteriorating or signs of wear and tear before it catastrophically takes down the piece of equipment, like a hole in a heat exchanger or something like that, or a major leak happens. You'd see the deterioration happening. So instead of having, I always call them like, there's emergency calls and then there's true emergency calls where stuff is down and it's either knocking out an entire part of the facility or it's costing like a production type place money. And it could cost them a lot of money if it goes down. Being proactive in tandem with preventative makes everyone have a lot easier time when a breakdown does happen. And it usually, I would say most of the time, saves money overall.
Cool. So let me go back to your point about the Ferrari. The Ferrari is taken care of because it's a status symbol, right? It's also in front of you constantly, where mechanical stuff is on the roof. It's in a mechanical room. It's not flashy. No one sees it.
Yep.
Right? So it's not a status symbol either. I mean, no one, unless you have a really, really cool and decked out mechanical room, no one's taking people to the mechanical room and going, hey, check this out.
Right.
Like, look how badass my mechanical room is. No one's doing that, right? The other thing is that, like you said about the heat exchangers. So if we check our heat exchangers in the fall and we find a crack or a hole or something like that, we're not going to, in the middle of January, we're not going to have an emergency call that the heat exchanger's cracked and then we got to shut your unit down because of it. Right? These are the things that are super important. I mean, this is something that I used to do too, to fill my time. If it was slow period and it was kind of in between seasons, there wasn't heating or cooling requirements in demand, is be like, okay, I'm checking the bearings on the blower wheels and the motors, and I'm checking the pulleys on them, and all these things that are required to run or get air moving through the facility. Because if that goes down, then you got nothing. You got no heating. You got no cooling. So things like this are important to look at in the shoulder seasons. Going back to heating season, you can start up like a big rooftop. If the induced draft motor is squealing, guess what? I'm changing this now while it's, you know what I mean? It's 50 degrees outside, not below. I mean, you guys are using Fahrenheit, but still we can go in below 0 in Fahrenheit, and I'm sure you do in Chicago at times, right?
Yeah, we do. So we have extremes on both ends where there is a lot of shoulder weather.
Yeah, us too.
Which can make actually selling maintenance sometimes harder because they're like, well, there's only like 3 months of extreme heat or extreme cold. I always joke, people open up their windows instead of turning on heating and cooling. Whereas if you're in a really hot climate like Florida or Arizona, or again, like a really cold climate, of course you need it because your equipment's running, full load potentially really frequently, where we have, spurts of a higher load.
Yeah, for sure. So where do you get your education from? Because like you talk the lingo, you have all the terminology down, and like what's your background in? Like, did you go to a trade school? Did you do anything were you a technician at one point? Like any of this? No?
Yeah, nothing. So
no? Okay.
I'll elaborate on nothing. So I didn't go to college. I graduated high school and I got into sales. I sold credit card processing, much different than this. And I, for some reason at the time, I had a bunch of friends who were union, either like operating engineers, plumbers, electricians, like within that field.
Yeah.
And minus the laboring part, to me, it seemed like they had a pretty good schedule. They all made pretty good money. And I was like, well, there's always construction going on, but I don't want to be a laborer. That's just not for me. Mm-hmm. So I was trying to figure out how I wanted to get into the space. And I actually applied. This is funny now. At the time, it was not. To a bunch of very large construction companies as like a project manager. I had 0 project management experience, and to apply to like Walsh and Power Construction, the 2 largest, and expect to just get hired was funny now. I did not. I got denied I think 71 times total.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really?
Yes. I just had no experience. I was applying for like pretty intricate construction jobs for some reason.
Yeah.
And then I had a recruiter reach out to me and she was like, hey, you have a sales background and you're trying to get into something construction related. Have you ever considered sales in like mechanical or fire suppression or something in that realm?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, no, I have not. So then I got an interview with Midwest Mechanical and then I ended up taking the job. So how my boss has our training set up initially, like for a new hire, I think he does a great job because I learned a lot initially. One, I was given a book of each type of commercial equipment you could see, what it did, like why you would have it, where it would be in a facility. So I
Mm-hmm.
read through that, and then he, on a whiteboard, went through like the laws of thermodynamic, closed loop system, built up system, what it would look like. He used an example of a house, what a coil would, like very baseline of like, I remember I always joke too, when I found out that cooling was rejecting heat, I was like, I am screwed. That is not what I thought. So he went through like,
Why were you screwed by like what made you
in
think
my
that?
head, I was like, what do you mean cooling is just cold air? And he's like, okay, well, yeah, but like, no, there's all this that goes into receiving, your air conditioning. So very interesting for me initially. And then something that I thought was really helpful was that we have a facility that has a large range of equipment that we've had a technician there for a really long time. And they allowed, any new hire, at the time it was me, you go to that facility and he walks you through like, this is what a cooling tower looks like. This is what a cooling tower does. This is a boiler. This is what a boiler does. And then honestly, being thrown to the wolves kind of helped. You do enough walkthroughs, you see enough stuff, as long as you're learning as you go. I've digested over the last few years. And honestly, I'm always learning something new. Sometimes I walk in a facility, I'm like, I've never even seen that or how this is installed. It's just something I'm not familiar with. And if I don't know, I'm more than happy to tell somebody I have no idea. And then I'll go back, figure out what's going on with it, or what it is or how it's applied within the space, and then talk about it. So I'm big on, if I don't know something, saying I don't know it. Where I got the
You might as
lingo
well.
from was just like understanding like through other technicians. If they're always really helpful. If I had a question on something, I'm like, okay, if I'm pulling a burner, why would it pull a burner? Or like when you're punching tubes, like why would you punch the tubes on this? I would just ask. And then I picked up that lingo, because then when I would be doing a walkthrough, I would say, being a girl in this industry, there's a lot of upside and there's also a lot of downside where people like thought I didn't know what I was talking about, which fair,
Mm-hmm.
honestly, fair enough. I'm not typically who you would see walk in to do a mechanical walkthrough, and they've been
Yeah.
doing it for 30 years and they know the building like the back of their hand. I totally understand initially being, guarded with me. So
Yeah.
learning, the lingo and understanding how the equipment works was a lot more helpful for me when trying to, break down those walls with people who have been doing it a while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.